Cyberbullying affects hundreds of people on the autistic spectrum condition. This includes trolling, stalking, impersonation, and it has a huge effect on people living with the condition. Cyberbullying has a huge impact. It's intrusive. It lives with a person 24 hours, 7 days a week. They've got access to their mobile phone, iPad and computer, and it stays with them every single day. Most online social media sites have blocking facilities, and this is the best way to deal with online trolls. If you have a disability and receive a threat on social media sites, you need to report this to your local police as a hate crime. People with disabilities who receive threats on social media sites currently come under their hate crime laws, but we need a better system in place.
Laws do exist to deal with online bullying, but sadly it's not the laws that are not effective, it's the way they're policed. We need to get the authorities, and in particularly the police, to start to look at the issues of online bullying very seriously. In the same way that you would receive a letter or a threat face to face, we need to get the authorities to deal with online bullying in the same way. Sadly, whilst the internet provides a platform for many to communicate, it also provides an opportunity for those people who want to send abusive messages to other people. The easiest way is to ignore them, but that's not always possible. I certainly feel that an issue exists, particularly with police, whereby they will go and attend incidents, they'll talk to people about the threats they're receiving online. But what they're not doing at this moment is understanding the backstory, the issue that the person may have a learning disability, and in particular autism, because that affects so many people in the way that they understand and they interpret the threats that are being made to them.
Having autism and being cyberbullied is completely different to somebody who isn't on the spectrum. When I got the cyberbullying, still have the cyberbullying today, it's with you 24/7. There's no escape from it. Myself, because I'm autistic, I take things very literally, and when I even received the death threat, I couldn't even venture out of the house. If it was somebody who wasn't autistic and received a death threat, they would have different coping mechanisms, how to deal with that threat. But when somebody's on the spectrum like myself, we take it very literally, and it affects us, it affects our anxiety, our emotions, it affects the way we live.
Online bullying is very different for someone who is on the autistic spectrum, compared to someone who's not. I feel that the bullying probably becomes all-consuming to that person, and that they can't switch off from what is being said or implied to them. And again, someone who is autistic, they find it very hard to deal with anxiety, and I'm sure that anxiety levels will raise and become very emotional and frightened, and will not be able to stop thinking about what is being said to them. Whereas someone who's not on the autistic spectrum could probably close a laptop down or shut the phone off and forget about it for a while and deal with it in a totally different way.
Autistic people tend to be very trusting and very naive in many ways. They trust people and they start talking to people, not realizing that some people actually are on the other side being abusive. They might say something that is not acceptable, and the autistic person will take it thinking that it's acceptable and it's okay for that phrase to be used. I think there is a risk of children like my son, for instance, not that he actually goes on the internet by himself, but there is people like Stephen who are more high functioning, that perhaps are influenced by what they are seeing.
I think that online bullying poses a higher risk to those on the autistic spectrum because of the fact that already they may have some challenges about dealing with social interactions. And it makes it that much more complex for someone on the spectrum to think, how do I deal with it? What is this person saying? Why me?
It affected me really bad being bullied online. You know, it's with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's intrusive. It's always with you. You cannot escape from it. It's worse than being physically bullied. You know, it's there constantly, every day. There's no escape from it.
Before I did the X Factor, I was just a normal guy, you know, doing a 9-to-5 job. I went on the X Factor and overnight, you know, become this sort of celebrity. And with that, to connect with your fans, you have to do social media, you know, Facebook, Twitter, which I was never a part of before. And then came the trolls. And I'd never experienced that before. And, you know, the bullying, the vileness, the threats to kill my family were unbelievable, and it was really hard to deal with. And I took it to heart. And some days, you know, I was in floods of tears, and it really upset me. It really got to me, and it took me a long time to understand that, you know, that these are just trolls, you know, that have got nothing better to do than to sit at a computer and bully people. When I first started getting the tweets off trolls and the bullying that I received online, I just couldn't read them. You know, I was blocking them, but just blocking these people. Then I'd just sit there. You know, I'd go home and I'd close the blinds. You know, and I'd sit there in my room in the dark and just think, oh, you know, it's. What have I done to deserve this?
I received a death threat that stated that they knew where I lived, they were going to come and fix me. And what made it worse was that at the time it was night time, I was at home on my own, so it was a lot more unsettling and it was a lot more terrifying. I didn't really understand why I was receiving the death threat either. It was completely out of the blue. I didn't know who the person was, I'd never spoken to the person. And it was directly linked to working with your campaign, which was even worse because they're threatening me over something that I feel that I'm doing good for.
The trolls who have been trolling me, I've had lots of things. I've had impersonation, people cloning my profile and pretending to be me. I've had, you know, hatred messages about myself. And, you know, some of these trolls who hide behind a computer, who are totally anonymous, you don't know who they are, and I just can't understand why they do it. You know, why they, you know, pick on people who are vulnerable, and people pick on people who are on the spectrum.
The worst one was a guy that wanted to shoot me in the head while I was on the X Factor tour, and that was a tweet, and him and his friends were actually tweeting together, and they were saying R.I.P. Chris Maloney, and they were planning on shooting me. And it was in Newcastle and they wanted to take me off the X Factor tour. And the police got called in and I said, you know, I don't want to be taken off the tour. I mean, he could have been in that arena with a gun for all I knew, but, you know, these fans paid money to go in to see me on the tour, and I was going to perform for them. It was publicised, the guys got arrested. I think they're awaiting trial at the moment. I can't say too much about it, but that was actually, you know, it's frightening that these people can do this quite openly and think that they can get away with it. So it's difficult, and what I've done now, you know, any kind of bullying that I've received or any kind of threat, I've reported it to the police.
One of my biggest fears as a parent to a child who is, you know, autistic, is his vulnerability and to how vulnerable he will be to all the technology that will be out there in the future, you know, through Facebook, Twitter, you know, online, social media sites. You know, they're everywhere. They'll be at home, in school, and if he is bullied and harassed, it's how do you get away from that, because it's with him all the time.
I think we need to move forward in very big ways to help people who are online, who have autism and are at risk of being bullied or being bullied. Awareness is just not high enough. People need to be ready to act. We need to simplify procedures for how to report abuse. And we need to also make sure that it's very clear that this is against the law, that that it has to become like a hate crime. It has to be seen as, it's that important that people who are feeling vulnerable are not subject to this kind of abuse.
Social networks have a responsibility. The problem is many of them are created, but without the thought of what they do about people online bullying. What we need to do is we need to say to the social networking sites, police your sites, take down those people who are making the threats, block them, ban them, and tell the authorities. And then we need to make sure the police proactively are looking for these people, because they're making people's lives a misery.
I'd love to see people get behind this campaign, to petition the MPs, to get these laws changed. I'd love to see it to go out in schools, universities, YouTube, so everybody can see it, talk about it, pass it on.
I would say to get involved in any way you can. Tell your clubs, your schools, your MPs, your workplaces. Get people involved, tell them about it. We need to stamp this out once and for all.
Just be there, aware, to back Kevin's Autism Bullying campaign, to make sure that they are ready to act. Don't be frightened. We will become bigger in numbers than the trolls.
The more we shout about it, the more we'll get heard.
There are so many ways that people can support this campaign, even by putting their name to it through Twitter and Facebook.
You've heard everybody on the film. Now it's your chance to get involved with the campaign. Sign the petition online on the campaign website. Contact your local MP. Also share this through social media, Facebook, Twitter, email it. Spread the message out. Let's get everybody involved with the campaign and let's change the laws on cyberbullying.